Hello, my name is Surendra,
Hi, I'm Nagarajan.
and welcome back for the second part of our 2020 IPL preview, where we review the remaining teams and share our predictions for this year's tournament. So, in the first episode, we reviewed 4 out of the 8 teams: the Chennai Super Kings, the Delhi Capitals, the Kolkata Knight Riders, and Kings 11 Punjab. And in this episode, we take a look at the remaining teams in the tournament: the Mumbai Indians, the Royal Challengers Bangalore, the Rajasthan Royals, and the Sunrisers Hyderabad. So, Max, I'm going to take the easy option here, and before further ado, I'm going to dive right in and talk about the Mumbai Indians, which as we both know, probably has the most balanced squad in the tournament. They've got a brilliant first team, which is settled. They literally can play the same team which played last year in last year's final, almost unchanged. And they've got excellent backup options, as good as in so much that they can play actually an entire second 11 with using just the backup option. So I think as much as it hurts me to
And
say
still be
this,
competitive. Yep.
well, yeah, and as much as it hurts me to say this as a CSK fan, I hate to admit it, but they are looking really really good this year, and it's going to be a tough ask for other teams to try and stop Mumbai from retaining the title.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
they,
I,
they
I can understand how tough it is for a CSK fan to admit how good MI is.
Well, yeah, well, I know.
So
I'm not going to glorify them anymore. But well, we are discussing MI, so I think we've got to discuss their strengths and any potential weaknesses that my team CSK can try and exploit. Um, so I think starting off, I think they've got a brilliant Indian and overseas contingent. I think the squad is packed full of quality match-winning players. So you look down the squad, you've got Rohit Sharma, you've got Quinton de Kock, you've got Surya Kumar Yadav, you've got Hardik Pandya, Krunal Pandya, Kyron Pollard, who's coming out of an excellent CPL. You've got Jasprit Bumrah, you've got Trent Bolt, who's a great replacement for Lasith Malinga. And even though Malinga has had a topsy-turvy past couple of years, he was still a key component of the MI team. But in Trent Bolt, they've got a fantastic replacement, and that's without even looking at some of the other overseas fast bowlers that they've got James Pattinson. Are they going to use him? You don't know. Mitchell McClanagan. Are they going to be able to use Mitch McClanagan? You don't know.
most
Uh,
likely they do. Yeah.
well, Nathan Coulter-Nile, do they need to use him? Probably no. But that's the sort of riches that Mumbai have sitting in what's potentially their the reserve squad, and what's probably not going to and they're probably going to be players who are not going to be the first names on the sheet. So they're very strong team. The one potential weakness that I do find for them is the fact that beyond Rahul Chahar, who had a fantastic 2019, and Krunal Pandya, I think they're a little short on quality spinners. So the only other spinner that they've got in the squad is Jayant Yadav, who again has played for India, has got a Test 5-4, had a decent season with Delhi a couple of years ago, but really isn't a well-known brand within IPL. So I think if maybe Chahar or Krunal Pandya get injured, or if they go for runs, then they don't have a third spinner in the squad to probably back up with a spinner of great quality to sort of back up and make use of the conditions in the UAE. So I think that's probably the one
I'm, you're
potential
trying very
weakness.
hard to expose the chink in their armor.
Well,
Let's.
I've got
Yep.
to, I've got to. But that's it. I think it's going to take some form for to be displayed by the other teams to try and stop Mumbai from retaining the title.
One
Um,
interesting observation. I like to know your take on this. Um, the Wankhede Stadium is their den.
yeah,
It's their bull ring. Like
yeah,
the crowd support is a major factor,
yeah,
and now they are moving to UAE. They've had a very forgettable leg of IPL in the UAE from the 2014 edition, and there are going to be no crowd.
yeah.
So will that be a factor? That remains to be seen, and probably is that the the thing that the edge that the other teams are looking for. Maybe it's going to be interesting.
Well, I think it's probably a factor which is going to affect all teams, right? So it's not just Mumbai who are not playing in front of crowds. all teams are going to be playing in front of empty stadiums, and I think that's something that all teams have to acclimatize to. That said, they would be missing the lift that they normally get from the crowd. And I really hope that Mumbai gets to those kind of situations where they find themselves in a lot of trouble and they're looking out for the crowd to help them, and they don't find the crowd, and which makes the matters easy for my team CSK to try and
Yeah.
win. But again, partisanship aside, I think I don't think it's going to be that much of a factor. Maybe it's going to be a little odd for players in the first couple of rounds, but I think they'll get used to it as the season progresses. The other interesting thing for Mumbai, which I think if you've considered their performance history in the past few years, I think there's one element which is where they've been slow starters in some of the tournaments. They should try and
Consistently, I suppose.
consistently, and they've always had this habit of putting together a winning streak in the latter part of the tournament and making it to the playoffs. That is something that they might want to try and avoid. The other avoidable piece of tournament history is the fact that every year in the past years when they won every odd year rather than the even year. So they won in 2019, they won in 2017, they won in 2015 and 2013. So
I've heard that before. Yes, yes.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's quite a well known phenomenon. Uh, that said, I think they look
You're
very
really
very
clutching on the
strong.
straws now. Come on.
I am, I am.
Yes.
But they do look really strong, and it will take a lot for the teams to
Yeah.
try and stop them in this year's IPL.
It's hard to argue they are the favorites. Yes.
Yeah,
Having
absolutely.
said that, let's turn the tables and probably move to one of the most least fancied sides, the Rajasthan Royals.
Hmm.
Um, they've basically kind of tried to rejig their squad a little bit. Um, one of the ways they tried to rejig was to actually let go of Unadkat and then buy him again for a much lower price. They've actually got a very interesting squad, which is actually packed with more English players than any other squad.
Yeah,
And one of the factors that helps here is that English players among the rest are going to be the least rusty. So they've got the likes of Butler. No Stokes is a big setback,
yeah,
but there is Tom Curran
yeah,
and there is Jofra Archer. So three of the players who would actually walk into an English 11 are actually in Rajasthan, and then they are going to be ably led by Steve Smith. So his leadership skills are there to be seen, and he'll have a lot to prove. What Australia would have been missing over the last year or so for obvious reasons. Um, and then they've got a very interesting acquisition in Robin Uthappa. I thought he was a
yeah,
great loss for KKR. He was a very trusted lieutenant, and now he makes his way to RR, and he has been consistently maintaining that he has at least 2 more years of cricket left in him. So he's got a lot to offer. And then um, the focus will inevitably be on Sanju Samson. So many years that we have been only hearing of the potential that he has,
yeah,
and it's high time that he turns that potential into performance. So he'll have a lot to prove. Unless he comes out with a 450, 500 runs plus season, I would say he would have underachieved. So we have to set that high a benchmark for a player of that caliber. So
yeah.
he's yeah, and
That
with the
I think
yeah
that's true. That's true as well. I think as far as Sanju Samson is concerned, he's had opportunities as recent as the New Zealand T20 series earlier this year. I think I think it was a fantastic opportunity. I think he got to play in 2 out of the 3 games, and I think in both games he had promising starts but didn't capitalize on them. And
he let go of his opportunity. That was very sad to see. Yes. In the bowling front, I believe among all the squads, they have the weakest spin department.
yeah,
There is really no one to talk worthy talking of. There is Shreyas Gopal, and who else? I can't. There's no name worth bringing up.
Well,
But
I think they've got a couple of options. You've got Mayank Markande, who's been traded, who had a fantastic 2018 season, I think, with Mumbai Indians, but then fell off the pecking order. Rahul Chahar replaced him
exactly.
last year.
Yep.
He got traded to, I don't remember which other team. He got traded to a different team last year, and then has again been traded to Rajasthan Royals this year. So I think if he gets the opportunity, he'd want to, try and recapture some of the, the magic that he created in 2018 and sort of make a name for himself.
Yep.
But yeah, I agree. I think they probably Shreyas Gopal is probably the only established consistent performer, consistent spinner over the last 2-3 years that Rajasthan can really bank on.
Yep.
Markande is you don't know which way he's going to turn out this year. I
Exactly.
think
He's blown hot and cold. So
yeah,
let's hope that this is again the third year and he's back in hot form again. Um, and and but the things that actually the spinners don't bring to the party, the pacers can. They have a
Mhm.
good variety of pacers. In Jofra Archer, it's needless to say he probably is probably the best pace bowler going around right now. He completely takes the pitch out of the equation. So slow, low pitch, no problem. He can deal with it. To say that he's got one of the most deceptive bouncers and the most deceptive slower ball. So very good prospect.
You
Um,
think his slow balls are more deceptive than Bumrah?
okay, let's not get there. Okay, he's going to be a handful. So
Well, okay,
uh, and um, and then they've got Tom Curran, who is a very established BBL performer. So he knows
yeah,
how to play in the T20 leagues around the world.
yeah,
So probably the first time he's coming around to IPL, and he's going to be a very useful addition to the RR squad. And then they have Varun Aaron, who
yeah,
has actually been um, very vocal about how strongly he feels that he could make a comeback into the national side. So if he has any such aspirations, then he has to prove that IPL. He has to use the opportunities he gets in the IPL, and so the pace department seems fairly well covered. But then there seems to be a lot of reliance on the overseas players.
yeah,
So the likes of the middle order, lesser known players like Manan Vora, Riyan Parag, they may have to step up.
yeah,
Robin Uthappa is there, a proven customer. And then the most exciting package of their all, Yashasvi Jaiswal has been
yeah,
added to the RR squad.
yeah,
So the highest scorer from the recently concluded Under 19 World Cup.
yeah,
So there's so much to talk about him. But again, this is a step up to the big stage, and let's see how he performs.
yeah,
So as long as the Indian players can hold their own, the overseas players have enough quality to see them through. But if uh, I mean, to be frank, looking at the squad, you just get a feeling that they lack a little bit of depth.
mm,
Um, if you get a very stable starting 11, it'll be very hard to play around with the combinations beyond that.
yeah,
So you just have to, the loss of Stokes would be a big loss,
yeah,
certainly.
yeah,
So let's see how well they can make up for it. But between Archer, Karan, and Andrew Ty, depending on what combination they choose to play, they have excellent death bowling.
yeah,
And Unadkat, every time he gets taken for runs in the IPL, he goes back to the domestic circuit, proves over and over again why he is again such a valued proposition. So let's
yeah,
hope that he comes back a better, smarter bowler. And with that, with Joss Butler and Sanju Samson and Yashasvi Jaiswal, they can get flyers, and Steve Smith can be there to and not to forget, they've actually acquired David Miller from Kings 11. So
yeah,
in the absence of Stoke, he may actually get more games. So all in all, there are sparks here and there. I still don't see how they can build a cohesive unit around that.
yeah,
But on their day, with those sparks, they can actually light up the evening, and probably be a stumbling block for some of the other more fancied sides.
yeah.
So
Uh, I do have a couple of observations. I think one, I think in the absence of Ben Stokes, it presents a wonderful opportunity for Tom Curran to actually make a start place in the starting 11 his own. He has previously played for KKR, but again, I think that was, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before,
Mm.
um, without a lot of success. But since then, he's gone on to establish himself in the Big Bash. He's gone on to establish a more regular more regular place in the starting 11 for the England team. He was part of the World Cup winning squad. He's come off a good bowling and batting performances in the
Yep,
recently
yep,
concluded series against Australia. So I think he's high on confidence. And if it was a toss up between him and Andrew Tye, I'd probably go for Tom Curran because he, in
yep,
addition to the
yep.
bowling, he also brings the batting skills to the table. Yashasvi Jaiswal was someone I absolutely enjoyed watching during the Under 19 World Cup. I think he is by and far one of the next one of the biggest batting talents to come out of the country, and I think he'll definitely play for India in the long run. So I think this is
Oof.
probably
I
his.
think we should hold that judgment. We've heard enough about Unmuk Chand and the likes of those players in the past. So, yes, he is very talented, and this is the stage that he would relish to perform.
Yep.
And we can only keep our fingers crossed and that he does well.
Well,
So,
I certainly think having sort of watched him bat and the kind of and the range of strokes that he has and the ability to tailor his his stroke play to the situation, I think he is definitely going to go places, and I really hope he has a wonderful IPL.
yep.
There's also Kartik Tyagi, who was
Oh
was
yes.
the Indian pace spearhead for the under 19 team again, bowling upwards of 140 clicks.
Yep.
I'm not entirely sure again where he'd fit into the scheme of things for Rajasthan this year, but I'm sure he'll get a couple of games to let it rip. Having sort of spent a fair amount of time discussing Rajasthan's spin resources or the lack of it, here's a question for you: do you think Steve Smith is going to give it a 12?
Um, Interesting question. I don't know. He may.
No, you've got to
I,
answer.
I, I, I,
You've got to answer the
I,
question, mate. It's either a yes or a no. You can't go, I
I'll
don't know. It depends on what the team management thinks. Is
I'll
it the
not
right
duck.
conditions?
I'll not duck the
You've got to
question
take a
this time.
stand. Yep.
Yeah, he may be forced to actually roll his arm over in a game or two.
There
The
you go.
the larger question I was about to actually ask in return was, would he actually play all the games for Rajasthan? He is the actual nominated captain, but looking at the team's balance, would he prefer to actually step aside to lend balance in one way or the other? Well, again, it's a long tournament. Um, 14 games are a long is a long round robin stage, so we may see all kinds of things come up. So why not? We may see Steve Smith roll his arm over in a game or two.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think barring fitness issues, he's had concussion issues during the ODI series, which has made him miss. I think he missed the entire one day
yes, yes, yes.
portion of the series. Um, I think he will play all games if he's available for Rajasthan because purely because of the fact that it's going to be played on slower, low pitches, and he's one of the best players of spin, definitely within that team. So I don't think there's any. I don't think there's a remote possibility of him even considering dropping himself, if that's what you're implying. But so one thing I've realized from this conversation is you can give a straight answer. So I just need you to get you to the right
See,
to the right question.
well, there are no straight answers, right? So this is an uninvited opinion. So we can basically have any take on the situation that we want.
Come on. No,
Keep bringing in those situations.
it's uninvited opinion, but it still needs to be an opinion. So on that note, I think I'm going to segue into the next team, which is the Royal Challengers Bangalore, which is a team which year on year their fans have had high hopes for, but unfortunately they've not been able to sort of deliver those performances. I think 2016 was the one year when. No, actually, going back, I think 2009 they made the finals of the tournament under Anil Kumble's leadership, lost to the Deccan Chargers. Then 2016 again they met uh, the Sunrisers Hyderabad in the final. And Kohli had an amazing year. Unfortunately, they couldn't get over the line. And ever since then, I think it's been a bit of hit and miss in terms of team combinations. Somehow things have never gelled for them. Uh, this year again, they've come with interesting mix of some proven match winners and some untested players, especially in these kind of conditions. So, and again, given Bangalore, given where they play most of their cricket usually, which is in the MH Autonomy Stadium, which is again shorter grounds, bouncier pitches. The squad was again selected keeping those conditions in mind. So this is another squad which needs to adapt to the different conditions in the UAE, and it's going to be interesting to see what sort of combination they use to do that. And there's some clear strengths. I think they've got a fantastic top order. They've got brilliant options in Kohli, AB de Villiers. They've got Aaron Finch. They've got Devdutt Padikkal, who has been much talked about. I think he was one of the highest scorers in the domestic competitions last year. And they've got a number of hard-hitting all-rounders in Chris Morris. I think it was a good buy for RCB. It's an area where they've had challenges in the past in terms of finding a consistent hard-hitting all-rounder.
He's been touted to be the one solution that fixes all their problems. So let's see. Yeah.
Well, he did have a couple of good seasons with Chennai. Then I think he had the odd good season with Delhi. But there's been a bit of up and down performances. Then there's Moeen Ali, again, who's coming off decent form. Then there's Shivam Dubey, who's played for India in the recent past. But again, as I said, you don't know how these players are. You probably would have backed them more to succeed on the faster pitches in Bangalore. On the slower pitches in the UAE, how are they going to perform? You don't know. They've actually got a really good bowling contingent. I think Umesh Yadav is someone who, over the last couple of years, has become quite consistent, takes wickets regularly in the power play. They've got Navdeep Saini, who I think has risen through the Indian fast bowling order, and is someone who is a solid performer. They've got Dale Steyn, interesting choice, a legend. But you don't know how much he's going to be able to play. And they've got a complement of good spinners in Yuzvendra Chahal. They've got Adam Zampa and
Washington Sundar. Very good acquisition. Yes.
Yeah, good, gives them good options. As always, a question with RCB is they've always had the talent in the team. Can they make the combinations? Can they get the combinations right to make it work? There's some questions which are staring at me in the face. Who is going to be keeping wickets? Is it going to be
I was about to ask there. Okay. Yeah.
Is it going to be AB de Villiers, or are they going to go in the tried and tested route with Parthiv Patel, or will they take a punt on Josh Philippi, who is an unknown quantity on slower surfaces, but he's just had a fantastic BBL. Adam Gilchrist rates him quite highly. He was recently selected as part of the Australian T20 squad, which played in England. It was a shame he didn't get to bat. I thought, especially with Carey struggling in the T20 side of the game, I think he should have easily at least been given one game to go and show himself to the world. But again, which bowlers will they play? Because I think they've got to try and figure out the combination of their all-rounders. Because I think they're also one of those teams which is light on specialist batsmen. So apart from Kohli, Devdutt Padikkal, and Aaron Finch, these are the specialist batsmen. AB de Villiers, if he's keeping wickets, you can consider him an all-rounder in his own right. But you don't know what sort of combination they're going to go for. So I think that's probably my I think that those are the biggest questions which the RCB team would be looking to solve.
Yeah, the only thing I would be concerned about is that most of the names, most of the big match players, the match winners that you've actually named, most of them are overseas players. How do you basically fit them all? Like, are you forced to ask AB de Villiers to keep wickets because you want to basically cover up for an overseas spot as well as fill up the wicket keeping spot? Are you going to have a situation where you're going to required to play someone like a Washington Sundar as a bowling all-rounder because his batting prowess has actually left many of us wondering, is he really an all-rounder? So Moeen Ali has had kind of an indifferent season against Australia. So yes, they have big match players. They are big names. Steyn, how many games will he get to start? That's something that we would need to see. So yes, every year they try to rectify the squad. Every time they try to tweak their squad. On paper, they appear to be a complete squad, a complete team. but somehow come the actual tournament, they find new ways of actually losing. So yeah, I think if anything that they lack is consistency in their squad. So let's hope for their own sake that the new acquisitions and the new combinations that they have thought through actually click this time. Um,
Yeah, so I think if it was left to me, I'd probably take a punt on Philippi at least for the first 3 or 4 games of the tournament. That would reduce the burden on AB de Villiers and free him up to be the explosive batsman that we do know. And if it doesn't work out, if Philippi really struggles with his keeping or with his batting, then you can always go back to AB de Villiers and try out other combinations. But I
yeah,
think I think it's worth a punt. That's my
traditionally, traditionally we have seen RCB produce good bowlers for India. Like Navdeep Saini is pretty much groomed under Kohli in RCB. Similarly, Chahal has been groomed completely under Kohli in RCB.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
bowlers have come from the RCB ranks. It's now high time that Indian batsmen make their name, despite the big names of Kohli and AB de Villiers in the side. Yeah, they actually need to stand up and start getting counted.
Yeah, and I think that's where my pick for the team is, and I think that's Devdutt Padikkal. Again, someone who is coming in
Yep.
with a lot of reputation in the domestic
India,
circuit, and
yeah,
I think they're really keen to play him. So he could go a long way in alleviating some of RCB's batting woes, especially in the in the Indian batting department.
yep,
So um, that leaves us with the final team, Sunrisers
yep,
Hyderabad. What do you have
yep.
for us, Nags?
Should should we say the nemesis for RCB?
Well,
Yeah.
in some ways,
So
yes.
yes,
In fact, it's interesting. There was another year where I don't remember if it was Deccan Chargers or Sunrisers Hyderabad, whichever team it is. It was a team from Hyderabad, and I think they played spoiled sport. RCB needed to win the game to qualify for the playoffs or something of that sort, and the Hyderabad team was already out of the tournament. Um, but they defeated
they managed to.
but they managed. So Hyderabad defeated Bangalore in the last season of the tournament, and I think if I'm not wrong, Dale Steyn was playing for Hyderabad at that point in time, and I think he bounced out Chris Gale and took out a couple of the top order wickets, which completely derailed the chase, and RCB lost the match and didn't qualify for the playoffs. So, uh, rightly put, the nemesis team for RCB is Hyderabad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this time around, they seem to have the problems of their own. But let's look
Really?
at their squad. So they've kind of stuck to the proven combination from the last year, the most explosive and the most talked about opening combination, the Warner
Yeah.
and Bairstow combination, straight coming off straight from Ashes rivalry, and then all the bromance was being talked about.
Yeah.
So they've basically gone with that again, and they've got um, Kane Williamson. It's the most likable, the most dependable, and a very able leader in his own rights.
Yeah.
I believe the only reason why the captaincy has gone back to Warner is because the management thinks that Kane may not start all the games. So in order to have a continuity in captaincy, they've had to go back to Warner. Um, but
And
this undeniable quality there.
Yeah, and Kane Williamson is also someone who has reinvented himself totally as a very capable a T20 batsman. And
I'm
again,
uh,
you
re-
just don't realize
yeah,
when and where he's making the runs, but suddenly you'll find that his strike rates are well in excess of 130,
exactly,
140.
exactly. Just 2018 edition when
Yeah,
Chennai won on their comeback, they obviously managed to beat SRH on all four occasions in that season.
yeah,
But you remember who narrowly missed the orange cap? It was Kane Williamson.
Kane Williamson.
So
Yeah,
it's incredible to think a person of that style, you would never name him in your predictions for the orange cap, and he would always be thereabouts. So that's the quality. So this
yeah,
undeniable quality there. Yeah,
yeah,
but I believe it's not so much about the overseas players again.
yeah,
It's about the Indian players who need to get counted again. So there is big season ahead for Manish Pandey. He's been there more or less now consistently around in the Indian scheme of things. So now he actually needs to prove that he is a stalwart in his own right, and and start scoring runs, bucket loads. Then there are interesting cases of Vijay Shankar, who's actually raised enough eyebrows with his selection in the World Cup. Now it's time for him to prove he's not a one-time wonder.
Yeah,
Uh, and the likes of the bowling attack is again too dependent on Rashid Khan. So remember going back to the 2018 season, the reason they had success was because of the Indian contingent of Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, Siddharth Kaul, Sandeep Sharma.
Sandeep.
They
Yeah,
had a fantastic season. All
yeah,
Indian homegrown pace bowlers, not express but very accurate. They knew when to actually mix up the deliveries. Sandeep Sharma would come and bowl his outswingers the first few overs. At times, actually bowl out in the power play. Uh, so but again they kept the core that did not click so much in 2019. So they are again going to be hoping that Bhuvaneshwar finds, in fact, even for India's sake, it'll be nice if Bhuvaneshwar finds his touch again.
yeah,
And then in Mohammad Nabi, they have an invaluable asset. Um, so he is an all-rounder, a quintessential T20 all-rounder who could fit into any starting 11. But with the team balance and the number of overseas players limit, it would be interesting to see how many games he gets to start. Then again, there is another Caribbean talent, Fabian Allen. We've only heard so much about him. I don't know how well. I actually I must be. I'll be honest. I didn't really follow him in the CPL, but his fielding skills are so much that he can probably make into 11 purely based on his fielding skills alone.
right.
And he's a very good left arm spinner. But then that's not a problem for the SRH. They have Shahbaz Nadeem to take care of that position. All in all, um, they again seem to have a squad which is going to require their Indian players to step up, because the overseas players will actually take care of themselves. So um, if they are to have a season like 2018, a lot of what happened in 2018 needs to happen again, which is
Yeah,
for their in bowlers to come together and perform the way they did,
yeah,
and for the top to fire, which more likely is going to happen because there is so much quality there.
yeah. I think Hyderabad have had challenges with the performance of their Indian team members, especially the batting side, for the past couple of seasons, and I think that's where they've really struggled. I think they've had a couple of different options. They've had Shikhar Dhawan for a period of time. He was holding up the opening. He was playing the anchor role, allowing Warner and the rest of the team to try and score a bit more freely. But ever since Shikhar has moved to Delhi, I think they've struggled to have some meaty contributions from the Indian top order. Um, and I think
How much they are going to rue the loss of or the non-availability of Shakib Al Hassan
oh,
is unbelievable.
yeah,
If they had known that it's going to be played in UAE, this tournament, his value actually goes up even more.
yeah,
Um, and it won't be wrong to say he was actually in his purple patch through the 2019 World Cup. So it's a big loss to not have his services.
yeah. It is unfortunate, but I think they've got to. They've still got a good a set of overseas players, and I think it's going to be interesting to see who they keep in the team, who they leave out. So I'm going to put you on the spot again. I know, as if I've not done it enough. Would you have Kane Williamson in your starting 11?
Yes, Williamson starts, bats at three, and Saha keeps wickets, so Bairstow sits out.
Oh wow. Okay. I did not see that coming, and I don't think Johnny Bairstow would particularly like that, especially after the century he scored in the last game against Australia. So I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to see who they, I think
Yeah,
it's a
the
blessing to
challenge
have.
is to manage the top three. Like, if they want
Yeah,
to pick all three of Warner, Bairstow, and Kane, or are they going to go with two of the three? Because they
yeah,
need to have Rashid Khan in the bowling side,
yeah,
and they would most likely prefer to have Mohammad Nabi as well. So
yeah,
that leaves room for only two of the three at the top. So
yeah.
it's very challenging.
I think especially with the lack of firepower in the late overs to finish the innings might probably tilt the scales in favor of Mohammad Nabi. um, and he might probably and adding to that fact, he also brings in the right arm off spin variation, which I think if you look at it, really complements the leg spin of Rashid Khan and the left arm spin of Shahbaz Nadeem, and now we can bowl in the in the power play. So I
Yeah.
think he does offer a lot more to the team, but it'll be incredibly hard to either Kane Williamson or Johnny Bezos to sit out because there's no way David Warner is sitting out.
But remember, there is no Tom Modi this year. It's
Well,
Trevor Bayliss. So let's see what kind of ideas he's known to be funky with his ideas.
true,
So yeah,
true, true.
yeah. You put me on the spot. I have given my prediction, but I don't know how accurate it's going to be. So
Well,
we'll see.
well, for once you didn't dance around the question, so you can give a straight answer. So
Yeah, well,
and
I actually surprised you with my straight answer. So
you did, you did. And so who else do you see is going to be key to the team? You talked a lot about Nabi. Any new faces?
there is Abdul Samad. So an Indian middle order batsman. So if at all they are looking for any of the Indian players to step up for SRH, it would be a good season for him. It would be a good opportunity for him to actually make a name for himself. So he would be someone to look out for actually.
Yeah, I,
But uh, all in all, I still see that with this squad, they could be a very serious contender for the playoff spot.
right. Okay. Which kind of leads me very nicely into the next segment, which is probably going to be the most contentious piece of discussion that we're going to have across our episode.
As if the questions that I answered were not contentious enough.
Well, they were straightforward. You just, dance around the bush. Uh, right. Which teams are going to be making the playoffs?
My pick, I think two of the four are a given in most people's book. So MI and CSK.
Yep.
And I'm going to say DC, Delhi Capitals. They remain my favorite. My favorite for the sake of having an open tournament as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a very tough tussle between RCB and SRH, the nemesis
Wow.
for the fourth playoff spot. So
Wow.
those are my four teams.
Wow.
What
So
about you?
so so no KKR in your predictions this time.
Um, well, I can only fit four, so
Well, I don't disagree with your predictions that much. I think Mumbai and CSK are probably they're teams which know how to succeed. So I think and the strength of the squad, the conditions that the games are going to be played in. I think MI and CSK definitely in the playoffs. Not necessarily 1 and 2, but definitely in the playoffs. Um, Delhi Capitals, I think, given the fact that they've had the consistency in the team and a good core of Indian players, which especially this year will make a lot of difference given that the pitches are going to be slower. So you expect that the Indian batsmen would be more comfortable playing with playing on slower pitches. So I think that gives them a great chance. Um, and I'm probably going to stick my neck out and say, maybe this is the year, maybe RCB make it to the playoffs once again.
ee
Uh,
sala
I'm
cup namde. Okay.
and I'm just hoping
Yes.
that that they get the combinations right, and we've got a new face in the playoffs this year.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Okay, and
So it appears that both of us have been unreasonably harsh on KKR. So let's see.
well, I,
Yeah.
I think for one, despite me, uh, you know, uh, backing Shubman Gill to have a brilliant tournament, I think there are there are other areas that they're going to struggle in, especially noticeable lack of spinners, which might probably hurt them, because you've got to remember, I think Kuldeep is coming off a difficult 12, 18 months. Narayan is not the same spinner that he was. And outside and leaving aside these two, they don't have any other frontline spinner. And again, if they were playing in Eden Gardens, I would have probably favored them more. Given that they're going to be playing in the UAE, I think they're going to have a difficult year, unless Dre Russ, shows some of his magic and gets him over the line in a few games.
Yeah.
Uh,
We'll see.
and who?
We'll see.
Yeah, well, let's see. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting few weeks. And of the four that you've picked, or you actually picked five, and I asked you for four. So, who do you think is going to win?
DC.
Wow. All right. Okay. Um, I, I admire your, courage in picking a new team. And as much as I want to say CSK, I think it's probably going to be Mumbai.
Come
Um,
on.
I think it's probably going to be Mumbai.
I mean, give us some new name. Um,
Well,
yes, Mumbai is a strong contender. We know it will make it to the playoffs. But then once it makes it to the playoff, it's anybody's game, right?
well, I'm not going to be a stickler for sentiment. I think I'm just looking at hard facts. My prediction, um, I think it's going to be Mumbai. I think it's going to be very difficult for, as I said, their squad has to suffer a massive loss of form, have some injuries, and the other teams need to capitalize on it to be, for Mumbai to not be able to win this year. So that's my
It's hard
bold
to argue.
prediction.
It's hard to argue. I must confess.
Yeah.
But as much as I agree with your prediction, I believe DC has just as good a chance.
Uh,
So let's see.
yeah.
Yeah,
So that's my bold yet predictable prediction. All
that
right,
that
moving on
wasn't
to a
very
couple of
bold, I must say. Yeah.
well, let's not brag about that. Moving on to a couple of other categories. Orange cap. Who do you think is going to score the most runs this year?
Ah, okay. Please allow me to have three picks.
Okay, you're keeping up with the theme of of how you've been answering your any questions that I
Okay.
post. So
Yes, it's even more challenging. There aren't just 8 teams here. There are just a big pool of players. So um, KL Rahul,
okay,
Joss Butler,
all right.
David Warner. One
Uh,
among the three. I'm sorry. I'm not going with the cliche options. I know. Um, I'm still a big Kohli fan. I'm still a big Rohit Sharma fan. But this is not about uh, 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 what I. This is not about my partisanship. But this is what I would like to see, and I think the tournament will be richer if any of these three players actually shine to the level that they are actually a contender for the orange cap.
I think you're just covering your backside with this last couple of sentences. Anywho, that's still not going to get you away from your answers. So you've gone for KL Rahul, David Warner, and Josh Butler. One out of these three for the orange cap. When I asked you for one answer, my response, my pick for the orange cap is going to be Shubman Gill, and I think he's desperate to prove himself, and I think Kolkata will play him at the top, should play him at the top, and I think if he does play at the top, he has the maximum opportunities to prove himself, and I think he will have a brilliant tournament. Um,
He at least needs to make it to the playoffs then.
well, it's funny you say that because of the four options, of the four options that we've got there, none of the teams, potentially only Hyderabad was one of the potential options you suggested, which would make the playoffs. KL
True.
Rahul, Kings 11 Punjab, Josh Butler, Rajasthan Royals, Shubman Gill, KKR. None of these teams have been slated to make it to the playoffs in our predictions. So yeah.
That's
So does
just
it
how inconsistent we are with our predictions. But yeah,
exactly
that's the
exactly?
fun in the
So
game. Yeah.
well, I think as I said in the previous video about CSK, for CSK, it's never about one performer; it's a collection of performers. So I think it's similar for Mumbai as well. If you look at their performance over the last couple of years, it's been a mix of Rohit Sharma has not necessarily had the greatest of IPLs over the past couple of years, but the combination of Quinton de Kock, Surya Kumar Yadav, Ishan Kishan, Krunal Pandya. I think they've always had people, Kyron Pollard. So they've always had people sort of stepping up and playing the right innings at the right time for them. So I think that's what has helped those teams be more successful. Whereas team and Andre Russell last year, he was the MVP for the tournament. But where did KKR end? They were fifth place, I think. So they didn't even make the playoffs. So individual performance only take your team so far.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think our predictions are at least the team predictions are incorrect. Um, Player predictions, who knows? Right. So that was the orange cap. Then we move on to the purple cap for the highest wicket taker this year. And what's your prediction?
We'll keep it quick. Rashid Khan. Period.
One option? Are you for once sticking to the template? All right. Okay. So Rashid Khan says, Nags, I am going to stick my head out and select Imran Tahir because
Wow. Okay.
I think in Harbhajan's absence, I think they would want an experienced leg spinner, and Tahir is coming off again splendid form in the CPL, and I would definitely like to see more of the chest beating, running to the boundary celebrations after he takes every wicket. So I think my money is on Imran Tahir, especially given the conditions that they're going to be playing in.
Bold bet, but not far off the mark. Let's see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's got to
And
be one of
again,
the spinners, I suppose.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and then the next category is the emerging player of the tournament. So I think essentially what we're trying to say is not necessarily a new face, but someone, even if someone who's played in the previous IPLs, who's not had a lot of opportunities, but is going to really make a name for themselves. This is different from the MVP, the player of the tournament. That's coming up later. Um, Emerging player, your pick.
Yashasvi Jaiswal. Uh, Watching him play the Under 19 World Cup, opening the batting for India across oppositions, the maturity with which he played the pace, he could actually play the long innings. So, in the absence of a good Indian opening option for RR, he is more likely to play all the games. So, we'll see the best of him, hopefully. So, yeah, he's certainly worth one to bet on.
In a shocking turn of events, I'm going to agree with you and pick Jaiswal as
See,
well.
yes, yes. Our picks for the teams in the playoffs were not far off as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's not as shocking.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. MVP, player of the tournament. Who's your pick?
Yeah, Hardik Pandya.
Okay.
Um, yeah, he's been a very colorful cricketer for so many reasons.
The right
He's
adjective.
yes. So actually, yeah, it's not far off to think that he could add another feather to his cap here. Colorful cap.
All right. And again, I'm going to stick with the same team, but go for a different player. I think Kyron Pollard is going to be the MVP in this
Yeah.
year's tournament. He is coming off. I think he's had a couple of years where he his form dipped. He was dropped by MI, but they still kept him in the team. He's been an incredibly important member of the team for several years now, and he's had a resurgence in his career. And I think it's culminated with a brilliant performance in the CPL. He's scored runs, taken wickets, was captaining the Trinbago Knight Riders, and he was the player of the tournament in the Caribbean Premier League as well. So I think, given all of that, I think he's going to definitely get a lot of opportunities to play for Mumbai. He's definitely going to get runs for them coming in late in the order because he's got the ability to clear the boundary at ease. He's always around taking catches nobody else is contemplating, and I think he's also had
Despite
an
his
uptick
size.
despite his size, and he's also had an uptick in his bowling form. So and his style of bowling, the cutters on slower pitches, I think would yield him a fair number of wickets. So I think Hardik Pandya for you, but Kyron Pollard for me.
Okay. Yep. I think we've done enough talking. We've
Yep.
probably um, covered all the categories as well. It's actually up to the viewers now to say how much they agree to each one of our opinions. And if they have any opinions of their own, we urge them to actually put them in the comments. That actually brings us to the end of this second part of this overview video, team overview video. I hope you liked the analysis, the details that we brought about. And if you had any feedback, please, we urge you to put them in the comments, and we will be actually taking a look at them. And needless to say, if you enjoyed and if you want to hear more of our videos, watch more of our videos, do like and subscribe the bell icon there. So that's it. It's game time. So we'll see you again with some game previews and the postmortem. So until then, we are signing off. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Goodbye.